Hello everyone, welcome to today's webinar. My name is Marcus Beer, I'm the Head of Cyber and Channel Sales at Chorus. Today we're going to be focusing on integrated SIEM and XDR services with a real focus on the Microsoft piece. Just a side note, today's webinar is going to be recorded and all the slides are going to be sent to every participant post the session. But just to run through the agenda quickly. I'm going to kick off with an introduction to Chorus and also the speakers that we have today. Following that, we're going to kick off with, I suppose, the key principles around how to adopt a modern zero trust approach to security. Following that piece, we're going to go into a bit more detail around integrated security incident event management and how we deliver extended detection and response services at Chorus. All of this is going to be supported by demonstrations as well, and there will be time at the end for various Q&A for the speakers. So just to introduce speakers, obviously you know who I am, but one of the speakers of today is Mark. Mark's Head of Cybersecurity at Chorus. He's been with us for a good 8 years now. He's been going through our XDR services in quite a bit of detail today, and we're quite blessed to have Mark from our perspective because he actually architected our services originally, so he's got a good piece of technical background for what we're going to be going through. Alongside Mark, we have Celine. Celine is a security technical specialist from Microsoft. We'll be supporting Mark from a Sentinel perspective and also the zero trust story to date. And yeah, just to go through an overview of Chorus and who we are and what we do. So we are a managed cybersecurity provider. So we have a genuine 24/7, 365 security operations service that's entirely based in the UK. This is a service that's underpinned completely by Microsoft technology, and it's been verified directly with Microsoft specialist teams about 3.5 years ago. Since delivering our services, we've been acquiring various competencies over the past couple of years. We are a gold security partner, but over the past year or so, we've achieved advanced specialist status for identity and access management, threat protection, and information protection. Alongside our managed cybersecurity services, we also have extensive capability within digital transformation. Our skill sets span across Azure, Microsoft 365 for security, compliance, and productivity, and also business applications around Dynamics 365 for CRM and the Power Platform. And ultimately, by working with Chorus, you get the best of both worlds. You have the experience and maturity of what you would normally find in a much larger provider, but alongside the personality of what you would normally see in a more smaller, agile, strategic partner. Now, this wouldn't be a cybersecurity webinar without a couple of statistics. 70% of successful breaches start on endpoint devices, but 98% of those breaches are mitigated against by basic security hygiene, such as deploying MFA, conditional access, patching, and user education. But should a breach be successful, on average, it takes around 187 days to detect. And once detected, if it's contained within 30 days, you'll save on average around £720,000, and which is why Gartner have predicted that by 2025, around 50% of all organisations globally will be outsourcing MDR, XDR services to partners such as Chorus, which is why we're focusing so heavily on this today. Enough from me. I'm going to hand over to Celine, who's going to go through the principles for zero trust.
Yep. Hello, everyone. So thanks for your time today. Thanks for joining us. Sorry, I just had to fix my camera, which was moving around. So there you go. Hello. So yeah, thanks for your time today. And thank you, Marcus. So I'm just going to share my screen in a moment, if that's okay. And so also just for information, so I come from an endpoint security background prior to joining Microsoft, also a security operations background. So definitely something that, I'm very familiar with security operations and really the sort of pains that come with that. And so, yeah, I'm just going to share my screen. Just take a moment, sorry. Yeah, so then just let me know if you can see that. It'll pop up in a moment. There you go.
All good.
Yeah, Yes. Yeah, so as Marcus said, then so we're here today to talk about how can you modernize and run your security operations in a way that's more efficient, reduce alert fatigue, and how we can help you to better defend against the latest threats. And so in this case, by integrating security, incident, and events management with extended detection and response, and how you can benefit from an integrated approach. And so just before I get into that, just to kind of cover some basics. About zero trust. So quite conscious that zero trust, it might seem like a bit of a buzzword. It may have lost its meaning over the years, but the way that we look at zero trust, it's more relevant than ever. And really going back to basics, zero trust is really about simplifying security. It's about making it more effective. And really, it should help you to empower your business. So rather than security restricting your business, it should instead help you to enable you to do better business. And so, as I'm sure as I'm sure you well know, is that classically the classic approach to security was that it was more about the network is the perimeter, and it used to be that we would just restrict everything to a secure network. But really, zero trust is about looking at all assets, all resources, wherever they reside, wherever they are. So it's really about protecting the assets anywhere with a centralized dynamic policy in the middle of that. And so really it's about having that continuous monitoring and that continuous protection and really to empower you to then do your business better. And so rather than just looking at the identities or rather than just looking at network, it's really about each identity should be continuously verified and look at if it's compliant. And so rather than being locked behind the grill. And so then the way that we look at zero trust, the way we approach it at Microsoft, it's actually based on NIST. What NIST have come out with one of their frameworks around zero trust, which was actually that NIST framework then part of the zero trust architecture from NIST has actually been mandated even by the United States. It was mandated as, okay, this zero trust should be applied. This is how it should be done, and so we've based it off of that. And so really, it's about empowering your organizations. And there are three main tenets around zero trust. And so it's about verifying everything explicitly. It's about using least privilege access. So that means only assign and only give just enough access or just in time access, but really give only the least privilege access that someone needs to do their job. And then thirdly, what's really important is to operate from an assume breach mindset or assume compromise. And it may seem a bit cynical, but the reason why that's so important is because, just as Marcus had said, what was it? I think the average time until a breach was discovered, it was up to 187 days. The problem with breaches is, yes, sometimes some breaches have actually taken many months, several months until they were discovered. And this is especially the case with advanced persistent threats, which are often done by nation states. This is a very dangerous issue where there's a threat has gained a foothold in your enterprise, but is laying low so as not to raise any alarm bells. But then in that meantime, it's the threat actor could be doing privilege escalation and moving laterally in your network, maybe already doing data exfiltration and that you're unaware of. And so that is why, going back to zero trust, it's really important to operate with the mindset rather than thinking, okay, as far as we know, we have not been breached, therefore we're okay. We haven't been breached. Instead, it's important to think, what if we have been breached already and we're not aware of it? What should we do? What can we put in place to ensure that we minimize the blast radius? If something does happen, or rather when we get breached, what have we got in place to prevent lateral movements? Do we have microsegmentation in place? Do we have critical servers, down-level servers that are legacy? Do we have them isolated? How do you ensure that that not anyone can just access it, but really how do you clamp down access to it? So it's really important to operate with that assume breach mindset, because that way, just in case you do get breached, or rather when you do get breached, you've got the tools in place to minimize that blast radius, and then to minimize the damage, or even better, to prevent it from the first place. And so going from those three kind of key pillars around zero trust, so again, we look at it from beyond just a network. So it's really about all identities, whether these are people, services, devices, and really the identities then define the zero trust control plane. And then it's also looking around endpoints. So this is all endpoints, whether they are kiosk devices or bring your own devices that your employees may be logging in from their personal phones. You know, what have you got in place to ensure that that's secure? And then also looking at all data. So really, it's all about the data at the end of the day. So data really should remain safe wherever it resides, in transit, at rest. Your data, you want to ensure that it remains safe, even if it leaves devices and applications and infrastructure. It should then therefore be labeled and classified. What's even better, there's a zero trust maturity model as well, and looking at what's good, what's better and best, and looking at the better and best. It's really about, you know, do you have a classification system, and even better, have you got a way to automate that? So do you have an automatic classification? Do you have data discovery in place? You know, do you know what data you have, and can you automatically label and classify it? And then when we look at applications as well, so it's really about securing all applications and APIs as well. So whether these are on-prem applications, SaaS apps, and really you want to have controls and technologies in place as well to discover any shadow IT, you know, any kind of third-party applications that your employees may be downloading from maybe, you know, a dodgy resource or any kind of any unsanctioned application. So you want to be able to know what applications, you know, what websites are my users accessing and downloading and using, and yeah, you want to be able to look at that. And then when it comes to infrastructure as well, so infrastructure then that looks at your infrastructure, whether that is on premises, whether you've got a hybrid model, whether you're using Azure or even GCP, AWS, as well as any container workloads and other workloads. And then, of course, if you have any IoT and OT devices as well. So if you've got any industrial control systems, that is all part of that infrastructure. And so you also have to consider security there as well, especially as the attack surface is increasingly expanding and OT operational technology assets are increasingly connecting to the corporate network and potentially even out to the internet, to the public internet. And then, yeah, so with your network as well, so ultimately all data is accessed over network infrastructure. So you want to think about what controls have you got in place? Do you have any microsegmentation, any real-time protection, any end-to-end encryption? And so each of these elements then, these are all the different points of control and points to look at and to consider when it comes to a zero trust architecture. And then with that in the center, then with having dynamic policies in place to control and to look at the context, and then to be able to take decisions for you. So for an example, with identities, you can have policies in place. You can use role-based access control. You can also utilize things like risk-based conditional access, so that you can prevent a login if there's an impossible travel or a risky IP and that kind of a thing. And so that was just to give you a sort of foundation around zero trust and the way that we approach it at Microsoft in terms of an architecture and model. So with zero trust, you know, as the foundation and having to build upon that really from end to end. And when it comes to threat protection and also when it comes to response, it's really about, on top of that zero trust, and it's really about having that breadth on top. So having security and incident events management on top, as well as SOAR. So security orchestration and automated response, which Sentinel is as well. So it's really important to have a SIEM in place with SOAR capability so that you can have visibility across your entire organization end to end, be able to ingest data from anywhere, so any data, whether that is Microsoft or non-Microsoft data, and then to integrate with an XDR, so with an extended detection and response, to have that protection and prevention and detection and response across your entire infrastructure and your end user environment. And so this is just to look at how our solutions map to that then. So on top with the SIEM, so we've got Microsoft Sentinel, and that's to give you that cloud native SIEM capability. So again, collecting data from any source, any data and any entity. And so Sentinel then delivers intelligence, security analytics, as well as threat intelligence across your organization. It gives you alert detection, threat visibility, as well as ways that you can proactively hunt across all that data. So you can query all that data. You can also benefit from notebooks. You can benefit from enriched reporting that you can do as well. There are also many ways to connect logs. So whether it's from your on-prem or whether it's from your firewall, whether it's from third-party solutions, Microsoft solutions, and you can also create custom connectors as well to connect data and partner custom connectors as well. And then again with Sentinel, you can also integrate it with a ticketing system. You can actually integrate it with Teams as well. So there's an integration in Teams so that you can assign an incident to an analyst in Teams. And then you can also especially run playbooks, and the playbooks will then take that automated response action. And then, so below then, as part of XDR, so extended detection and response, so it's really two key parts. So on one hand, you've got what's now called Microsoft 365 Defender. So that's more about securing your end users. And then on the other hand, on the other half of XDR, you've got Defender for Cloud, and that's more about securing your infrastructure. And I'll get into a moment into breaking down the meaning of this, because quite conscious that Defender can be quite confusing as a term because there's so many defenders. What do they each mean? And so here I'm just going to demystify that. So again, but first just a bit more on Sentinel. So again, you then benefit from that threat intelligence, also looking at MITRE ATT&CK framework tactics and techniques that are mapped to alerts. You can also hunt across your estate and see if you have any hits to that threat intelligence. Have you got any specific techniques that have been detected in your enterprise, and really to help you to respond rapidly with built-in orchestration and automation, and therefore really making your security operations more efficient, making the job of an analyst easier with quicker response and reduced alert fatigue. And then, so in terms of Microsoft 365 Defender, so again, that's to secure your end users. So that means whether that's securing your identities, endpoints, applications, so any applications, email and collaboration tools, documents, and cloud apps. So M365 Defender, it helps you to stop attacks before they occur. You can integrate threat data, you can do live response. You can also view alerts correlated into an incident. So that means that any alerts that are related to the same multi-stage attack, let's say, then those alerts will be correlated into the same incident, whether the source is coming from the CASB, so Defender for Cloud Apps, or whether it's coming from Defender for Endpoints, so that's your endpoint protection solution, or you can see any mailboxes that have been affected thanks to Defender for Office, in case there was a chain of attack that happened with a phishing attack. And so therefore, with M365 Defender, you get that integrated approach, and you can really see any of the entities that were affected and how they were affected. And then, of course, you can then benefit from automated investigation and automated remediation. Again, really helping you save time and making the job of security analysts a lot easier in terms of having to do a lot less manual work and manual remediation. And so just a bit more on Defender for Endpoints. So this is probably one of our most well-known solutions. So it used to be called Defender ETP, or what people often refer to as Defender. So Defender for Endpoints, so that is your next generation AV. It is also your endpoint protection and your EDR, so your endpoint detection and response. Nowadays, now you also have threat and vulnerability management as part of that. There's also device discovery, so you can discover the devices in your enterprise. You can discover any rogue devices. There's also very good attack surface reduction, so in terms of that prevention aspect. And again, you have that auto investigation and remediation. You've got live response as well, and being able to even run scripts on machines, all natively from within the security portal. And then the endpoint detection and response as well. And then, of course, we also support the Microsoft. You've got the Graph API. You've got integrations and APIs that you can use as well. And then, so now a bit about Defender for Office 365. So again, so that is all part of that end user security. So as part of M365 Defender. So Defender for Office, that's really going beyond just basic anti-phishing. So it includes anti-phishing, but not just that. So it's really looking at any attacks or risks that have to do with email, but also collaboration tools. So OneDrive, SharePoint, Teams. And it's about that prevention and detection, but also you can then do investigation, do hunting, as well as the automated response and remediation. And actually with Defender for Office, you can also benefit from end user awareness and training. So meaning, for example, you can simulate attacks. So you can do a simulation to your users and then see who passes the simulation or who fails at it. But rather than approaching it from a punitive way and making people feel bad that they've, clicked on a link they shouldn't have, for example. Instead, it's about teaching them. So it's about teaching your users how to look out for threats better, and then also to not be afraid to report, because it's very important for all of your users to report when something's wrong, because again, it could happen to anyone, and reporting it will really help. And yeah, you don't want users to feel afraid of saying something. But yeah, so just for information, Defender for Office, it is now all integrated in the same security portal as where you access Defender for Endpoint. So again, getting close to that single pane of glass and giving you that integration approach. And now to pivot away from the kind of end user, just one more thing to add. As part of M365 Defender, you do also then benefit from Defender for Identity, so to protect identities, and then Defender for Cloud Apps, which used to be called MCAS, or Cloud App Security. So Defender for Cloud Apps, it's about securing any application, so whether it's Microsoft applications, third-party applications, or your own applications, and such. And so that gives you that app control and that CASB. And there are also integrations now with data loss prevention, information protection. So now pivoting to then securing the infrastructure finally. So then that is Defender for Cloud. So it used to be called Azure Defender. That's one of the kind of hero solutions. So one of the hero tools used to be called Azure Defender, now rebranded as Microsoft Defender. And Defender for Cloud. And the reason why is because it's not only for Azure, but it's also, you can also connect to your on-prem. So it supports on-prem, hybrid, multi-cloud as well. So meaning you can actually then have that cloud, that CSPM, so that's Cloud Security Posture Management, as well as CWP, or Cloud Workload Protection, across your entire cloud estate. So that means if you've got workloads in AWS, or if you've got workloads in Google Cloud, you can connect to that and secure that as well as your Azure. So therefore, giving you that multi-cloud coverage. And so Defender for Cloud, then you can secure your SQL databases, your virtual machines, container registries, Kubernetes nodes, network traffic, Azure App Services, and then and now as part of Defender for Cloud, we now have the offering called Defender for IoT. So Defender for IoT, that is to protect your IoT devices. So whether these are enterprise IoT, like some connected printers at work, or smart TVs, or cameras, as well as industrial IoT and operational technology assets. So whether these are PLCs or engineering workstations that you've got, if you have an operational technology. So if you've got industrial control systems, now you get that visibility, that threat monitoring, that vulnerability management, and that protection really for your OT and IoT environment as well. And then just a little bit more on Defender for IoT. So there are two different ways to deploy Defender for IoT. You can do either agentless. So agentless means that it's looking at the network level. This is really great because obviously when it comes to industrial control systems, you might not want to actively be scanning because this is maybe a manufacturing production site, and you just you can't be doing that. So rather it's doing a network level passive monitoring with deep packet inspection. This is also really good for any kind of bespoke assets that cannot support a traditional agent or a sensor. And so with Defender for IoT, you can then gain that continuous visibility. You can then also ingest that data into Sentinel at no extra charge, or you can also integrate it into. There's also integrations with other SIEMs and other tools as well, and there's also integration for ticketing systems like ServiceNow. And then you can also benefit from an automated discovery of your assets. Okay, and so just to kind of summarize then, so the way that we approach XDR and SIEM, it's again, so it's about securing your end user environment, securing your infrastructure, and then on top of that, having that breadth and that visibility across your entire organization from end to end. And we've actually seen that you can benefit from up to 60% of savings compared to multi-vendor security solutions, and automatically eliminate or contain at least 97% of threats. And we've seen as well an over 200% return on investment over 3 years. And then just a couple of kind of more marketing slides, but I just thought it would be really worth to point out that so we've been a leader in at least 5 Gartner Magic Quadrant reports across from access management, across to CASB, endpoint protection, unified endpoint management, and information archiving as well. And then with Forrester, so Microsoft Security has been a leader in 7 Forrester Wave reports. So as you can see here, all the way from security analytics, enterprise detection and response, email security, endpoint management, cloud security gateways. And there you go. So just before I hand off, so if you'd like more information on this, feel free to just follow this link. So aka.ms/XDR, and then you can read more and find out more about extended detection and response and SIEM with Microsoft.
Thank you very much, Celine. That was great. Really good overview to all the tools that we're going to be talking about. Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending the webinar. As per Marcus's very kind intro at the start, my name is Mark Jones, and I'm the head of cybersecurity here at Chorus. And I've been responsible for designing and building a lot of our XDR services, basically our managed cybersecurity services. And obviously, we've done some slides today. I thought it'd be fun to do a demo and show you kind of what these tools are capable of, and really how we use them to build our services and deliver really fast security outcomes for our customers. I'll just share my screen now a second. Hopefully everyone can see that.
Yep.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So just to kind of give you a high level of what we're going to go over, but essentially we have a customer environment, and that's going to be defined by the white background. And I also have a management instance, which is going to be a black background. So here is the customer environment, and here is the management environment. So the way our service works is obviously we connect you to our management environment, and that allows us to have access into your environment, into your Sentinel instance, into your tools, allows us to run all our automation, monitoring and reporting through your environment. So just to begin with, I thought we'd do a quick overview of what onboarding looks like, especially when you're using the Microsoft tools. And as Celine mentioned, I don't think even Microsoft expects you to just use the Microsoft tools anymore. People have mixed estates, and really it's all about using the Microsoft tool set to provide the protection for your estate, whatever that looks like. So initially we'll go over onboarding. There's a couple of steps to onboarding. From the customer's point of view, really we can go to the Azure Marketplace, which I'll do now, and you can find Chorus in the Azure Marketplace. So if I search for Chorus, you should see our security offerings jump up in a second. Here we go. So we've got a few offerings on the Azure Marketplace, and we're using something called Azure Lighthouse to basically give us delegated access into your environment. So if we go through one of these, I might choose XDR for Cloud, which covers really all the features and tools that Celine's been talking about. So I want to delegate access to my environment. Very simple, next. And we're basically asking for some permissions into this customer's environment. And those permissions are basically for our tier 1 analysts. They're going to get the Sentinel responder RBAC role. They're going to get the rights to run logic apps. For our higher, more privileged analysts, they get a few more permissions. And then we also have some service principals or app registrations, you might know them as. And those app registrations are responsible for kind of pushing new content into your environment, running automation, monitoring, and pulling off some of the reporting that we issue every week. So pretty much just agree to this, and that will deploy very quickly. And then there's basically a couple more steps. The first one's going to be delegating access to what I want those permissions to apply to. So in this case, for our service, I'm really asking for permissions to be delegated to only the resource group that contains Sentinel. So in that case, it's webinar. We'll pick another one and we'll delegate there. And then that's basically all I need for the customer's Sentinel instance to appear under our management instance, and for us to start being able to use our automation against that environment, and to be able to start monitoring it and providing a service. The other side of onboarding is kind of consenting to our app registrations. So we've talked a lot about automated response and SOAR capabilities in Sentinel. That's something that we leverage quite heavily. I think Marcus mentioned we started working on this service about 3.5 years ago, and very early on we recognized the need for developers, basically. So we brought in a team of developers, and it's something that we've really tried hard to build up and do as much as we can with. So the last part of this is just consenting to some app registrations. So as an example, if I go through the consent process, this is basically giving us rights into your Azure Active Directory, so we can revoke sessions, we can reset passwords, we can do all kinds of things, confirm risk, dismiss risk, etc. And also maybe get some information out of Azure AD to enrich some of the incidents. For example, we could find out who an employee's line manager is, or what office they work from. So with that done, we've really set up kind of everything we need for the service to work. And unlike kind of a traditional SOC service, there's not going to be, a 4-week baseline and a 4-week tuning period. It's really going to be normally an hour or a 2-hour call to get get through these initial onboarding steps, and then we can start providing you protection over your environment. And so that's really onboarding, and then we're going to talk a little bit about our service. So if I jump over into the management instance and go into Sentinel, we should be able to see our webinar Sentinel here, which has some very genuine alerts here to look at. I haven't faked at all, and we're going to talk about a few things, go through a few scenarios. So the first one I wanted to talk about was it's not really enough to just monitor for alerts and incidents and see when our tools trigger. There's another part of security that's also really important, which Defender for Cloud helps us with, and that is basically reviewing the environment for configuration changes. Administrators can make changes, they can weaken the security of your environment. They might have unknowingly weakened the security of your environment. And it's really important to keep track of your security posture and where perhaps gaps are added. I think there's, going back to the stats that Marcus talked about, I think there's a lot of incidents that are caused by configuration changes that aren't even in line with the company's policy. But if an admin makes a change, very often that can lead to a problem. So let's go through that scenario. So here I have a virtual machine in Azure, and I'm going to pretend I'm a very lazy admin. I just want this to work, and I want to connect to it. And so I'm going to do what I shouldn't do, and that is I'm going to expose RDP over the internet. I'll just pop this rule in and say that I would like to connect to this virtual machine just straight through the public IP address. And we should see that rules added. So we've got this RDP rule here. And you can see I'm getting a warning. RDP port 33890 is exposed to the internet, and this is only recommended for testing. So it's giving me feedback that the thing I'm doing isn't very sensible, but nevertheless, it will allow me to do it. Maybe I just want to fix something very quickly. You know, the admin's job is just to make sure things work, not necessarily do things in the most secure way. That's our job, to make sure we're keeping things secure. So if we pop over to our management instance, I would get an incident here. We can see there's been a config change and the RDP port is now exposed to the internet. And we talked about the SOAR capabilities, and it's useful to understand kind of what a traditional SOC service would do if this happened. If they were monitoring for config changes, then typically they would escalate. They'd say, all right, the RDP port is exposed for this machine or on this public IP address that belongs to the organization. And they're going to send an email, they might phone you, they might send a ticket into your ticketing system, but there's going to be a time delay while you wait for an internal team to pick that up and review. And really, we need to be as fast as we can. You know, if this happens in the middle of the night or when an admin team is already stretched, perhaps, that response can be quite slow. So we need to do something a bit faster than that. So if we jump into this incident then in a bit more detail, I can run a playbook straight away. So my response to this incident is probably going to be, I'm going to look through the Azure activity logs and find out who made the change. And then I'm going to look at their account. Was it just an innocent mistake, or was it perhaps a sign of their identity being compromised and an attacker trying to deliberately weaken the posture of the organization? So we've got a playbook down here. You can see playbook remove exposed management port. And these playbooks live within this management environment. So the second we hook you up, you kind of have access to all these playbooks. Typically for a normal customer, we just attach that playbook to that incident. So if someone exposes a management port to the internet, and we know that the organization wants to use Azure Bastion, or they want to use privileged access workstations to do management, maybe that's against company policy, we could just attach this playbook to when that incident fires, and we could have it immediately remove that configuration, basically. That's not going to be very helpful for the demo though, so I'm going to trigger it manually. And if I jump back over just to show the comparison. So obviously we've got RDP here, and we will trigger this playbook. Great, that's going to run. And we'll go into view full details here. And if I pop over to webinar 02, you should see it's already pulled out the RDP rule. So rather than just escalate and wait for someone in the company to do something, we can take action immediately, right? And this is like a very simple way to start understanding the SOAR capabilities. We see something insecure, we can do something about it straight away. We know it's against company policy, and we can respond very, very quickly. And like I say, we could attach that to just the incident firing before a human even looks at it. We could have ripped out that rule, and we're reducing the exposure for the organization. So that's kind of a really simple example. I also have a virtual machine over here. I'm going to show you some things that might happen on a user's endpoint. So we'll show you some more examples of SOAR and the automation we can do. But something I wanted to talk about, and another way we use automation in our service, is with proactive CTI. Salim was talking about threat intelligence. There's obviously a wealth of threat intelligence that we get through Microsoft. In our service, we also use additional paid and public sources. We're members of certain government CTI sharing partnerships. And where we have a very high confidence in an indicator of compromise, like an IP address or a URL or a file hash, if we have a very high confidence that that is something malicious, rather than just look for matches to that IP address or any connections that have been observed in my organization in the last 7 days under that IP address, I might want to also, that's very reactive in nature, but I probably want to use that threat intelligence that I have high confidence in and just send it into the tools and say, block this if you see it. So that's basically what we're going to be covering here. I have a typical user endpoint, and I've received an email, but you know, this is also relevant to perhaps something we see in our customers is sometimes attackers use web chats and things like that. Email protection might be great. You might have some kind of web chat, and they'll try and use similar tactics to basically phish someone, get someone to run some malware, and get that initial access into a company. So it's a fairly typical email. Someone might have been looking at a job application on the website. They've sent a link to a CV. It's not necessarily that suspicious. I know Resume IO is a real service, and I might want to click on that, but that's actually going to point me to something malicious. However, it's something that we know about because we've had an indicator of compromise and we've had high confidence in that indicator of compromise, and we've pushed that out to all of our customers into their Defender tool sets, and we've said, block this if you see it. So if I click on this, you'll see immediately I'm shut down. And that's basically the proactive CTI. We're basically constantly 24/7 pushing new threat intelligence that we have high confidence into your block lists. And we can also extend that to firewalls through the SOAR capabilities of Sentinel. We can also extend that to things like conditional access. If you want us to block malicious IP addresses through conditional access, that's also something we can automate. And that's just a very simple example of another capability. And then the next thing I wanted to show you was really an example of selective isolation. So really, we ask all of our companies to use Defender for Endpoint, and we have a lot of belief in that toolset as being excellent. One of the things we can do is isolate. So if we know something's compromised, we can basically cut the networking on it, but provide our analysts with access to maybe review the forensic information on that machine, maybe pull some information off the machine while it's really shut down for that user. That's a very helpful capability. We can also do things like restrict app execution. So we can say only things that are signed by Microsoft are allowed to run on this machine until we know that we fixed the problem. We can run on-demand scans, and really through our live response session, kind of a terminal session into each machine through Defender for Endpoint, We can really do whatever we want to. We can run any number of PowerShell scripts to get more information, and there's a whole wealth of things we can do through Defender for Endpoint. But as an example, if I go back over to our management instance, and let's pretend I'm an analyst reviewing this, I can see first of all an incident for the phishing email, which shows me the user, the IP address, and the machine, what happened, the process. I might want to enrich that data and get some more information about that IP address, but we won't go into that too much today. We're going to look at this second incident here, where I can see that automated investigation response has maybe failed to clean up all the artifacts on a machine from a recent malware attack. Salim mentioned automated investigation response. It's an enormously helpful feature. It really improves the time that we can respond to things. And just to be very clear, auto remediation failing to clean up everything is not very common. It's just a very easy scenario for me to use in a demo to show you what we do. And perhaps in your organization, you are pretty risk adverse, or you don't have much appetite for leaving endpoints able to connect to your network if they have kind of any remnants of a malware attack or a cyber attack in some way. So it's a pretty common scenario where we say, if Defender for Endpoint couldn't automatically clean up everything related to that malware attack, we might want to just proactively isolate that machine until an analyst can look at it and really be sure that that machine is safe. So the way we're going to do that is, again, we're going to go into our view full details, and we're going to get into our playbooks. We're going to wait for these to load, and you can see through our management instance, I have a lot of automation available to me, and I can do a lot of things. So this is the machine in question that the malware failed to be cleaned up on, and I want to set the isolation as selective. So I'm going to run that, and we should see this machine is basically has its networking cut. But one of the abilities in Defender for Endpoint is we don't just have to completely shut it off. We can selectively isolate. So there's a difference between full isolation and selective isolation. If we do full isolation, we're completely cutting the networking, other than our own analyst access on that live response session. If we use selective isolation, I'll show you the comment that's put in there. If we do selective isolation, we're allowing basically email and Teams to still work, but everything else is going to be shut down. And you can see that our logic app has added a comment to the incident. We can see the machine ID. It's done some magic on the back end. Essentially, we're looking for the machine ID through the incident. When we find the machine ID, as long as it's Azure ID joined or hybrid Azure ID joined, then we can look through the sign-in log. So we can look in a different place. We can take that machine ID and we could say, who is the last logged in user for this machine? Who did we last see log into this machine? Because that's the person we probably want to let know that something's happened. And if I go over to our machine here, we should be able to see that things are not quite working as they should do. We should see that that's been isolated. So I can't reach that page. I'm pretty shut out, and I'm not able to do much. Although Outlook and Teams are going to work because I've used selective isolation basically. And then if I want to unisolate that, then they'll probably receive a Teams message, or they'll receive an email basically telling them that they need to contact the service desk or whichever escalation route that exists for the customer for us to take that out of isolation. And then if we want to unisolate that, it's going to be a very similar process. There's a playbook for that as well. So I can go back in, follow the same steps. And I also have the ability to unisolate that machine. So I'm going to run this playbook. Off that goes. And exactly the same as before, we'll see it add another incident into the, we'll see it add another comment to the incident to say that it's worked and it's unisolated the machine, and then that user can continue working as normal. Obviously, it goes without saying that all of the examples I'm showing you today are customizable, so things might not work for your organization, and you might not want us to take certain actions in your environment. It's really something we cover as we do transition and onboarding. We'll pre-agree the automated responses, we'll pre-agree the actions that we can take in your environment. And you can see another comment saying that machine's been removed from isolation, and we should be able to get back to Google now and continue working as we want to. And that's really kind of a few examples of the sort of capabilities of Sentinel, and how we build our services and use our services to deliver fast security outcomes for our customers. I think final point for me, I think in the last 30 days, our mean time to triage has been about 6 minutes, and our mean time to respond is sitting around 10 minutes. So we can offer you a very fast reaction time for any incident, whether that's in the middle of the night or during the day. We're going to move over to the Q&A section now.
That's great. Thank you so much, Mark. That was really informative, and love the stats there. I'd like to invite Celine, Marcus and Mark back on to answer a couple of your questions. I appreciate we are already tight for time, so we're going to jump straight in. Marcus, I think this is going to be one for you. Great question here. What are the advanced specializations? So what are the advanced specializations?
Yeah, no worries. Just to go through those. So we have we awarded advanced specialist status for threat protection, identity and access management, and also information protection. I think probably what's really important to understand of those is how you actually achieve those additional competencies. Essentially, we have to have a certain number of people within Chorus who've passed a wide variety of Microsoft focused exams. We have to have had experience both implementing and managing these environments across a wide variety of industries and customer size, and it has to be a certain number of those customers to have positively referenced us back to Microsoft as well. So it's a whole multitude of pieces, but those are the three that we've achieved.
Amazing, that's great. Thank you so much. Again, very conscious of time. So what we'll do is we'll email the replies to all the other questions out to the individuals that posted those in the Q&A. And I just want to say a big thank you to Marcus, Mark and Celine for sharing their expertise this week, this webinar. What we'll do is send out a follow-up email including the live webinar event and all the contact details. So if any of you have any further questions, please do not hesitate to contact one of the team. Finally, we wish you all a great rest of the day.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks all.
Thank you.